Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet.
This review covers the Harley Davidson Heritage Softail Classic. It's a 1/8 scale kit from Revell number 7302. Now, Harley Davidson was right when they named this bike a classic. It had plenty of power and comfort to tackle the open road. And when someone hears the words Harley Davidson, this is what they picture in their mind. Now, this big 1/8 scale kit, it's a skill level 2 for the intermediate builder, but it's a snap tight, so it's really not all that hard as far as construction goes. It's molded in around 80 pieces in black and gray, with chrome plated and clear parts, along with amber and red lenses. Now, it's got rubber tires and spark plug wires, and water slide decals are also included. We'll show you some detailing techniques that will make this kit look as good as a regular glue kit. Now, with some extra work and a few aftermarket parts, it would be hard to tell the difference. When you're done, the kit is about 12 inches long, 6 3/8 inches high, and 3 5/8 inches wide. Oh, hey, that sounds like Newt tapping on the glass back there. He's our program director, and he's got a question about this review. So come on in here, Newt. What do you got there?
Hey, that's a beautiful bike. Do they go pretty fast?
Well, I don't know what the advertised top speed was, but I would expect this bike to get up around 100 miles an hour easily. But it was known for its nice ride with the Softail, the looks and sounds of the Harley, and the fact that it was made in USA. Here are the contents of the kit. As you can see, they're nicely laid out trees. The decal sheet in the lower right there has a lot of pinstriping and markings for the tank, etc. Now, they're still in pretty good shape, most of these, even though they were issued back in the 70s. They're pretty desirable, so some of the pricing's up, but you can still find them at online auctions. Now, we'll be using mostly just a liquid cement if we need any. It is a snap kit. Occasionally some super glue to keep the stubborn ones down, and also some white or clear glue for the clear lenses and the amber and red ones. A couple reminders here. Make sure that you use the manufacturer safety and use guidelines when you use any of the products that you see or hear of in our review. And remember that you need to scrape off chrome or paint for that matter for any parts you're trying to glue together. The instructions have you working first with the frame and the forks, but before we get to actually putting them together, we're going to do a little cleanup on the seam lines, and some of the holes need to be opened up. As you see here, I've got the X-Acto blade on some of the mating holes to make sure that you're not pushing flash and you get a good grip there. We're going to deviate from the instructions and assemble the forks halves together. Scrape the plating off and glue them together with some thin glue. In some of the reference photos I saw, it looked like the lower half of the forks were more of an aluminum color. So I decided to remove the lower half of those, and some of the chrome wasn't real good there anyway. So I scraped and sanded that off, and I painted it with some aluminum color paint, some metallizing paint actually. As you can see here, I'd left the nuts and bolts and the fork ends there chrome, and then I taped off the upper portion to retain the chrome there in preparation for the paint. We can now add the forks after the paint is dry on those to the frame. So we're going to assemble the frame halves together, and then all but the front portion there, the collar, which will enclose the forks at the rear pivot. And so go ahead and assemble that, but don't get any glue in the collar to allow that to function. Look for these three engine parts here, components, the cylinders and the parts below the tank there, and paint those with some, I used Duplicolor black primer. Next thing I did was to mask off the lower portion and then spray paint the tops of the cylinders with some chrome paint. Also, you'll notice that on the left side there, I used a silver Sharpie to highlight the edge of the fins. I gave the oil tank and the cover there the same treatment with the chrome paint. I got the footrest piece out, and I covered the foot plates there with some bare metal foil and just pressed it down into position. After trimming the foil off from the foot pads, I sprayed the unit with some chrome paint, and then I removed the bare metal foil from the exposed foot pads to make it look as if they were rubber. I also painted the brake pedal and the mount there with some of the chrome paint, and the rubber plunger, as you see, is painted some matte black with a little Model Masters satin black paint. I decided to add some of the decals to the reflectors. You can see here, however, that the decals have a lot of extra carrier on them, so I used a Sharpie and a straight edge to cut them and trim them as close as possible to make sure that they fit properly. I went to place the decal on the air cleaner, and that's that center thing, you know, the 80 cubic inch Heritage Softail, but it really stands out against the chrome. So I painted the center there ring where the decal goes with some matte flat so that it didn't stick out so badly. And next we can basically assemble most of the engine pieces here and add that to the frame, spread the frame apart a little bit and slip those in there, and you can add the peripheral parts that we've just painted and decaled. Here's the model up to and through step 2. I'll get the side plate out here, and as you can see, and I've added some black wash to some of the bolts and crevices. It kind of brings out the features on all chrome plated parts. Also, I painted the top of that with chrome again to contrast it to the engine. The rubber parts on these pieces were painted flat black, then masked off, and the rest were painted chrome silver. And so here's the assembly after step 4. And I also noticed that the engine halves, they tended to want to come apart. You know, it's a snap kit, so I had to add a little super glue, a thin super glue to the center of that, and press those together tightly to make sure that they stayed together properly. There shouldn't be a gap there. I also found that the spark plug holes were a little too large for the spark plugs, so I had to glue those into place as well. I decided to add wide whites to my tires for a classic look, and so I taped off the rest of the tread there, as you see, with some masking tape, and used a little micro scale micro mask to just bridge the gap there for the very edge of the tread. And then I sprayed them with a little bit of white primer, and then I also painted them with some Duplicolor white paint. Then after removing the mask material, I sprayed the whole thing with dull coat, and of course that gets repeated on both sides. I noticed that the rear disc was a little warped, kind of actually bent, so I simply used some finger pressure and gently bent it back into position. Next, I painted the brake rotors with some aluminum paint. I wanted to paint it such that the outside of the rotors here looked like, they had caliper effect on them. And then I painted the insides of them, as you see on the left side here, with some steel paint. Found that the tires had either shrunk over time or just were too small for the inner diameter, so I actually had to trim off, we see arrow number 2 here, all the way back to number 1, and then I removed number 1, the original portion, all the way around. Now the tires are directional, and you can go ahead and assemble those according to the instructions. They're at the end of the review if you need to refer to those. And then add those to the frame, making sure that you get the directional rotation properly oriented. Now I'm going to work on the paint for the main body and gas tank. And I chose to do a two-tone for this kit, so the first image here shows the 2 gas tank halves. They get cleaned up, lightly sanded with some 600 grit paper, and then ready for primer. And then the second image here shows the fender on the left before any cleanup, and the 2 tank halves have been painted using some Duplicolor hot rod gray primer, and the fender on the right has been painted with some silver metallic. For the 2 tones on the fenders and the second color, I cut a thin strip of Tamiya tape and formed it to curve around the fender there towards the top ridge. Then I masked off the entire area using some thicker pieces of tape, and the secondary color was painted on. It's a one-coat lacquer. It's called Purplicious, It goes on quick and thick, so you have to spray it fast in an even pattern with light coats. As you see here, I trimmed out the even the fender stripes here to get rid of the excess carrier so that they looked more natural. And then I placed those onto the fenders at the the line there of demarcation. And finally, after they had dried, I painted the unit with some one coat lacquer wet look. It's a clear coat. And in the second one here, you see the fenders have the decals on them, and they look great. I painted the saddlebag supports aluminum, and then I, after that was dry, I masked off the lower portion and painted the rest of it chrome, as you can see there on the outside ends. We're going to deviate from the instructions again, and we're going to attach parts 40 and 41 of the saddlebags together. We're going to put them together. So I decided it was easier to do that and then paint them and then attach them to the supports later. In the image here, you'll see on the right side, it shows the two parts of the saddlebag put together. And then I used some bare metal foil on the teardrops and buckles and painted all the rivets by dry brushing some chrome paint on them. I did not paint the saddlebags in the seat. I thought the black molded color looked just great. And now it's time to assemble the rear fender and all the attachments. Now the backrest and the light brackets were painted chrome. And then small washers that are included to attach the light brackets, they're in step 7. They weren't quite tight enough to hold the parts on. So I had to use a little liquid glue there as well to keep them in position. And now you'll see in step 10 here that we're going to attach the fender and the exhaust. And they, of course, have you adding the backrest, but we had done that on the fender assembly prior. So put this assembly into position now. You can see the way that the backrest attaches to the support, it would have been really problematic if you had waited until step 10. Also, I had to remount the hole on top of the fender so that it would slide over the post that it sits on. Painting the gas tank was a little tricky, especially as it was a two-tone. So what I did was cut out the decal to use it as a template. And then I put some masking tape on a flat surface, and then I traced the decal so that I knew where to cut the masking tape. Then I cut out the mask to correct shape, and then I applied it to the tank. With the tape mask in place, I painted the rest of the tank with the purplicious color. Then I removed the tape and added the decals into place, and the tank turned out very nice. Next, you can grab the console, and I painted the full leather portions there a flat black, and then I mixed up some 2-part clear epoxy and filled the gauge after applying the decal. This makes it look like there's an actual glass lens over the Speedo. Hand grips were next, and I painted the the rubber portions for the grips flat black, the rest of them satin black, and some chrome for the levers. Although the kit didn't come with some brake lines or hoses, I borrowed some from another kit, leftovers, and I added those to my build. Now the windshield and the front lights then were attached easily to the front fork. Now use some clear or white glue to add the lenses to the headlights and turn signals, etc. Finally, spread the forks a little bit in front and then attach those to the hubs on the front tire. There you have it. Your model is complete, and it's a splendid display, and it sits on the shelf with my glue kits, and they don't seem to mind a bit. Now, you'll notice that it's not like the box art, but it does have some appointments to it. And if you follow these details, it's actually not that hard to do, but with a little extra work, what a standout this kit makes. If I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. I hope you like this premium step-by-step scale model kit review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking on the icon in the lower right of any of our reviews, and you can find us on Facebook or our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.